November 2000. California is in crisis. Rolling blackouts are sweeping across the state. Hospitals are running on backup generators. Traffic lights are dead. The elderly are dying in the heat. And in a trading room in Houston, Texas, an energy trader picks up the phone and laughs. "Burn, baby, burn." That call was recorded. What you are about to hear is not speculation. It is not interpretation. It is what actually happened, in the words of the people who did it. Enron was founded in Houston, Texas in 1985 by a man named Ken Lay. On paper, it was an energy company. Natural gas pipelines, electricity generation, boring, unglamorous infrastructure. But Ken Lay had a different vision. He didn't want to own physical assets. He wanted to trade them. He wanted Enron to be a marketplace for energy, the way Wall Street was a marketplace for stocks. To build that vision, in 1990, he hired a man named Jeff Skilling. Skilling was a Harvard MBA. He was brilliant, ruthless, and completely convinced that the rules of business existed for people who weren't smart enough to find ways around them. During his Harvard Business School interview, he was asked if he was smart. He answered in terms that left the interviewer with no doubt whatsoever. He got the job. Together, Lay and Skilling did not build a company. They built a performance. And for a decade, almost everyone believed it. The first thing Skilling did was convince federal regulators to allow Enron to use a method called mark-to-market accounting. Here is how most companies work. You sell something today, you record the revenue today. When the money arrives, it shows up on your books. Mark-to-market works differently. Under this method, if Enron signed a 20-year energy supply contract, they could calculate the estimated profits from all 20 years and book them on day one. Not when the money arrived. Not when the work was done. On the day the contract was signed. This sounds like an accounting detail, but the implication is enormous. It meant Enron could create the appearance of massive growing profits without generating a single dollar of actual cash. Sign a deal. Book $400 million in projected profits. Move on. And because the profits kept growing on paper, the stock price kept climbing. And because the stock kept climbing, Enron could do more deals. And because they kept doing more deals, the paper profits kept growing. It was a machine designed to look like it was producing, while producing almost nothing. But mark-to-market alone wasn't enough. There was another problem: the actual debt accumulating underneath the surface. To solve that, CFO Andy Fastow built a network of shell companies, hundreds of them. They had names like LJM Cayman and Raptor. Their entire purpose was to absorb Enron's losses and debt so that none of it appeared on Enron's public financial statements. Fastow earned $30 million personally from running those companies. The auditing firm that approved all of this was Arthur Andersen. They earned $52 million from Enron in the year 2000 alone. Both of them knew exactly what they were looking at. Through the 1990s, Enron became the darling of Wall Street. Fortune magazine named it America's most innovative company 6 years in a row. Analysts gave it the highest possible ratings. Business schools wrote case studies about it. By 2000, Enron had 20,000 employees, offices in 40 countries, and a stock market value of $70 billion. It was the 7th largest company in America, and the culture inside matched the image perfectly. Jeff Skilling ran the company on what he called the Performance Review Committee. Every year, the bottom 15% of employees were automatically fired, not based on any individual failure, not based on any specific incident, just for being in the bottom 15%. Employees called it rank and yank. It attracted a specific kind of person: risk takers, rule pushers, people who believed that being the smartest person in the room meant the rules were written for somebody else. That culture was about to be pointed directly at the state of California. In 1996, California deregulated its electricity market. The idea was to create competition and lower prices for consumers. In practice, it created an opening. Enron's traders saw a market they could control, and they developed strategies to do exactly that, methodically, systematically, and with code names. Death Star, Fat Boy, Get Shorty, Ricochet. Death Star worked like this. Enron would schedule fake electricity shipments to deliberately create congestion on transmission lines, then collect payments from the grid operator to relieve the congestion they had manufactured themselves. Ricochet was simpler. Buy cheap California power, move it out of state on paper, then sell it back to California as out-of-state power at prices not subject to California's price caps. They were getting paid to solve problems they were creating. Enron's own lawyers reviewed these strategies. One internal memo noted the trading practices, quote, appeared not to present problems under the tariff. They had lawyers telling them how to do it without getting caught. The results hit ordinary Californians directly. Between 2000 and 2001, California experienced 38 rolling blackouts. Electricity prices increased by 800%. The state paid approximately $9 billion more than it should have for electricity that year. Hospitals ran on emergency generators. Water treatment plants lost pressure. At least 38 people died in heat-related incidents during those blackouts. But in the Enron trading room in Houston, the reaction was different. When a wildfire knocked out a transmission line in California, causing prices to spike and the lights to go out across the state, a trader got on the phone. Burn, baby, burn. In another recorded call, traders talked about an elderly woman in California struggling to pay her electricity bill. They called her Grandma Millie. One trader said, now she wants her $250 back. They laughed. These were not rogue employees acting without the company's knowledge. This was an organizational strategy executed with internal documentation over months. No individual Enron trader was ever criminally prosecuted for what happened in California. While Enron was draining California from the outside, something quieter was happening inside the company. For years, Enron had encouraged its own employees to put their retirement savings into Enron stock. The company's 401k plan was heavily loaded toward company shares. Employees were told this was confidence, that the people who built the company believed in it enough to invest their futures in it. And employees believed it too. Why wouldn't they? Fortune said it was the most innovative company in America. The stock had been climbing for years. These were people who had given a decade or more of their working lives to building something they thought was real. By 2001, thousands of Enron employees had the majority of their retirement savings sitting in one place, Enron stock. Then, in October 2001, Enron announced it was switching 401k plan administrators. The switch created a mandatory lockdown period. During that period, employees could not sell their Enron shares. What Enron did not announce was that company executives were not subject to the same lockdown. In the months surrounding that period, Ken Lay sold $101 million in Enron stock. Jeff Skilling had already sold $60 million earlier that year. Other senior executives sold hundreds of millions more between them. While the lockdown held Enron's own employees frozen, unable to protect themselves, the people who knew exactly what was coming were getting out. When Enron filed for bankruptcy on December 2, 2001, the stock was worth 26 cents. Employees with retirement accounts worth $1 million lost everything. The average Enron employee lost $56,000 in retirement savings. For some, it was the money from 20 years of work. 20,000 people lost their jobs on the same day. They were handed a box and escorted out of the building. What makes all of this harder to accept is that someone inside tried to stop it. In August 2001, a vice president at Enron named Sharon Watkins wrote a 7-page memo. She didn't send it to a journalist. She didn't go to a regulator. She sent it directly to Ken Lay, her own CEO. The memo said, and I'm quoting directly, "I am incredibly nervous that we will implode in a wave of accounting scandals." She had identified the exact mechanism: the shell companies, the hidden debt, the accounting fiction. In plain language, for the man at the top. Ken Lay received the memo. He hired Enron's outside law firm to investigate. Not to investigate the fraud, to investigate whether Sharon Watkins could be legally fired for writing it. She couldn't be fired. The law protected her. So the fraud continued for 4 more months, while 20,000 people's retirement accounts moved towards zero. Every public company in America is required to have an independent auditor, a firm whose job is to verify that the financial statements are accurate. Enron's auditor was Arthur Andersen, founded in 1913, 85,000 employees, 84 countries, one of the most prestigious accounting firms in the world. Their name on a financial statement meant something. It meant this has been checked. This is real. Arthur Andersen had audited Enron for 16 years. They reviewed and approved every accounting trick, every shell company, every mark-to-market projection. When the investigation began, an Arthur Andersen partner sent a message to employees instructing them to begin destroying documents related to the Enron account. Over the following weeks, employees shredded documents and deleted emails at a scale that investigators later described as deliberate. Arthur Andersen was convicted of obstruction of justice in 2002. The conviction was eventually overturned on a technicality, but it didn't matter. The firm was already gone. 85,000 people who had never set foot inside an Enron office, accountants, analysts, administrators in cities around the world, lost their jobs. One company's fraud destroyed another company that had taken 90 years to build. The fall itself was fast. In October 2001, Enron announced a $618 million quarterly loss, the first public admission that something was wrong. Analysts who had given the company perfect ratings went silent. Within weeks, it emerged that Enron had hidden billions in debt in off-balance sheet entities that the public had never seen. The stock fell from $90 to under $1 in less than a year. December 2nd, 2001. Enron filed for bankruptcy, the largest corporate bankruptcy in American history at the time, a $70 billion company worthless in under 12 months. Ken Lay was convicted of fraud and conspiracy. He died of a heart attack 6 weeks before sentencing. Jeff Skilling received a 24-year sentence, later reduced to 14. He was released in 2019. Andy Fasto pleaded guilty and cooperated with prosecutors. He served 6 years. California reached a settlement with Enron for $1.5 billion, but the $9 billion Californians overpaid for electricity was never fully recovered. The 20,000 employees who lost their retirement savings received an average of less than $3,000 each from the bankruptcy proceedings. The executives kept most of what they took before the collapse. Here is what Enron actually was. Not the story of one greedy man. Ken Lay did not do this alone. Jeff Skilling did not do this alone. Enron required accountants who knew what they were approving. It required Wall Street analysts who either didn't look closely or chose not to. It required a board of directors that literally waived Enron's own internal code of ethics in writing to allow Andy Fasto to run the shell companies that hid the debt. They waived their own ethics code and wrote it down. Every single system designed to catch this failed. And most of them failed not because the people inside were incompetent, but because when the stock is going up, when everyone is getting rich, when Fortune magazine is calling you the most innovative company in America, no one wants to be the person who asks the uncomfortable question. That is not a story about Enron. That is a story about how these things keep happening. The accounting methods Enron helped normalize are still used in modified forms today. The culture of ranking employees against each other and cutting the bottom percentage is still standard at some of the largest companies in the world. The practice of loading employee retirement funds with company stock is still legal. Enron did not create these things. It just showed what happens when you take them to their logical end. A company is made up of people. And when the people at the top decide the people below them are not people, but variables in a financial model, this is what it looks like. 20,000 people with a box of belongings, $9 billion taken from a state, and a trading room recording that was never meant to be heard. Burn, baby, burn. The California tapes were played publicly for the first time in 2004. When they were played before the California Public Utilities Commission, there was silence in the room. One commissioner said, "I have been in this industry for 30 years. I have never heard anything like this." The traders who made those calls were never individually prosecuted. That is the Enron story. Not a story about one bad CEO. A story about what happens when every system designed to say no decides to look the other way at the same time. What do you think? Was this the failure of a few individuals or a failure of the entire system built around them? Let me know below.